So I'll just take a pause. Folks, if you have any questions that you would want to ask about anything we discussed or apart from that as well, just feel free to unmute yourself and, go ahead and with the question.
My question is, and this comes from my own context. So I'm working as an engagement manager. So like from what I heard from the panelists regarding the skills or the the work, the skill set that a good product manager should possess, I could see a lot of commonalities between that and my work as a project manager. For example, having that technical understanding or managing the stakeholders, engaging with the clients, things like that, or having a vision for the product or the feature that we are developing, things like that. So what would you advise that a project manager should pick up during his experience as a project manager that can eventually lead him to become a product manager? That is the first part. And then as a follow-up to that, um, how to go about, like when I actually decide to move to the product manager role, how to go about in that recruitment process? How can I grab recruiter attention that I am capable of a product manager also, be with my previous experience as project manager?
Got it. Great. Yeah. Any of you, Roshan, Monica, Tamal, you want to field the questions?
So I can start and then others can join in as well. So Bhargava, you are in project management, which is already a one step towards the role of product manager, right? So the kind of discipline project management comes in, that's very important for product manager as well, right? The only thing which I think as a project manager, you can extend yourself more is involving in the project and business discussions. So whenever you are working on, whenever your team is working on a product launch or on a feature discussion, involve more yourself more into that. Discuss around them that what is the reasoning, how we are coming to this decision of doing a feature or a product. What is our business strategy feeding into it, and try to understand this a little more. And from that going forward, maybe just try to ask them that can I help you guys pilot some of the stuff, and that in itself would be huge, right? So when I saw a lot of project managers moving to that, I always see a kind of discipline, a kind of maturity that they already bring on the table. The only execution where they want to involve more is towards the understanding product, understanding business, and understanding the strategy side of stuff. Over to you, Raushan and Tamal.
Yeah, I think you have covered most of the part, but what I understand is, since you are more closer to the end customer as compared to the actual product managers who would be working to build stuff for you, right? So you can bring in those insights, and that's where you start getting involved into those discussions. Hey, I think taking decision X makes more sense because it brings Y value to the business, right? And that's where you start engaging into those discussions. But I think you are already into that space where you work closely with someone. You need to just build on that engagement much better and try to add in values from the business standpoint, right? And you will have all of those questions, so you can ask your product team or any tech team that you probably might be working with that, hey, why did you take X decision instead of Y? What governed that decision making? What were the risks that you had thought of while taking that decision? How did it end up? Did you have any mitigation plan in place, right? So all of those discussions will help you gain a better understanding of the gap that you currently fill into.
Yeah, I think just to add from my side also, I think usually project management, as Monica said, right, like almost all product managers have to do some amount of project management as well, right? Product execution is a very big part of our working, but there are some extensions to this, right? So although project management will be one core part, product management starts a little earlier on, where you have to understand what do you want to build, why do you want to build it, right? Like when you're connecting with customers and as we discussed, identifying problems, can you slowly start doing those things in your role, maybe in your current organization, right? That could be one thing, like starting being participant into conversations where we are deciding, okay, what is to be built and why is it to be built, what value does it bring to business, as Roshan and Monica said. And also to the latter part where you've built the entire project now. How do you now take it to market? Close that feedback loop as well, right? Like you've built something, now you have to take it to market. You strategize your way on how do you take it to market, and then can you learn from that as well? Like once you've built something, how do you learn what you've shipped? How are people reacting to it? Is it meeting the kind of success criteria you had set for the product? How if you're experimenting, how is the response been for your for your experiment, and bringing all of that learning again into the loop on okay, now what do you have to iterate? How do you iterate on? So those two parts that I mentioned, right, on the beginning and the end, if you can start being more participative in those roles, I think you slowly be sort of extending your role as a project manager and moving more towards the product domain as well. And in terms of the second part you mentioned, right, like how do you approach recruiters? I think from the first basic step would be getting shortlisted and having your profile being reviewed by recruiters first, and then comes the interviews and all of those parts later on. I feel with your experience as a project manager, you would definitely have a foot in the door, right? As you said, you will have a very high probability to get into product roles. But for everyone here who is probably trying to get into product roles or trying to get shortlist from recruiters, I would definitely ask them is that highlight those areas or skill sets of your prior work experience and education, which are core skill sets required for a product manager, right? Like for example, project management is a very core skill set. You highlight that. If any of you have worked with data a lot, data analytics, gathering insights from data is also a very important part of product management. If you've worked in marketing or connected with customers before, highlight those areas. When you start to highlight these skill sets, which PMs usually want, and connect it to your yeah, Tamal, anything you want to add before we move on to the next question?
No, I think that's very comprehensive answer that all of you have covered up already. I think just to add to one point that Sahil, that you mentioned, for any role that I believe which is relevant here as well, right? If you have the clearest way of judging it is basically to see how much can I make a product manager in the same meeting redundant, right? How much can I cover for him in that call itself? For example, like if you see that the questions are coming in and you as a program manager start feeling that, hey, I can answer most of it on my own. And even if the product manager is not there in that room, I can cover for him. I have that level of clarity. It's a sort of like a self-judging tool. That means that I am at that, level to make a transition into a product management role as well. That's it. And others, I think, have pretty much covered all the points.
Yeah. Hope we answered your question, Bhargav.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.